Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Roots and Refuge. So the video you guys are about to watch is a video that I originally shot for my channel, Maya's Workshop. But after getting it done and talking it over with Jessica, we decided to post it on Roots and Refuge because of the content and the fact that we feel like it would help and benefit the gardening community to see the project and the problem it solved. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video and thank you for watching. Hey guys, welcome back to Maya's Workshop. Today I'm out in the garden and we're going to be working on very interesting video, I think, because this is something I've never done before, and it's something that Jessica and me kind of came up with last year based off of a problem that we ran into and how do we solve it. The problem was that in South Carolina, when planting the tomatoes outside, we ran into a lot of issues with getting too hot. South Carolina is just super humid and super hot, and so we discussed the possibility of suspending some shade cloth like we have on top of the window greenhouse over these 3 beds which she predominantly planted with her tomatoes. So today we're going to be setting all the posts for the design that I came up with, and then tomorrow we should be able to suspend the shade cloth that I ordered last year for this very reason over it, and it should extend this tomato season for us extensively. Like I said, I've never done anything like this before. I mean, putting a shade cloth on a already done building like that, or if you see on top of the high tunnels, you know, that's fairly straightforward because the shade cloth is already sitting on the structure that you built. What I'm going to try and do with this is sink and concrete some 6x6s at the corners. So you see where the black walking fabric is, or the garden fabric. It's not really garden fabric, it's the forget what they call it, but it's the fabric we're using to put underneath the rocks for the walkways in the garden. We get that from Grower Solutions. And wherever you see the corner, so right there at that corner, and then back to this corner, that's where the 4 corners of the 6x6s are going to go. Then I'm going to put one on the opposite end in the corners, and then I'm going to put one support one halfway between those two, and I'm going to run like a 1/8 inch thick cable to all those posts, and then use it to tie the shade cloth to. Now, I'm going to run some down the middle, which is down this walker right here, essentially right where I'm standing. And these are going to be a little bit higher than the outside corners, and the reason for that is to give the something for the fabric to lay across to kind of give it some shape. If I tried to suspend it just from one side to the other with nothing in the middle kind of holding it up, I have a feeling it would probably just droop and it probably wouldn't be as effective. This one will be set higher to be able to give it the proper shape and lift we need in the middle to expand out and cover it. Now, to help me get this done, I've enlisted my good friend and partner in crime, Wes Green, or as we say here on the farm, Wes. Say hi, Wes.
Hi, Wes.
So Wes here is in case y'all don't know him, is a friend of ours, a very close friend. Might even say he's my best friend. Kind of depends on how he's behaving that day.
Yeah.
But he works with us out here on the farm 3 days a week and helps me do stuff like this. You know, crazy ideas and just regular farm to farm or farm day-to-day stuff. You know, like I said, Wes, W-E-Z, not W-E-S, in case you all were concerned. He also goes by David, which my kids randomly just started calling him David one day, and normally I would say that's very disrespectful. You should never call an adult by another name, but it's really hard to teach them that whenever Wes responds to it and carries on an entire conversation under the name David.
And I gave them names.
That's true too. So they all call each other by not the right names, and so we just let it ride.
Yeah.
To get started, we're gonna start by jigging holes. Well, no, actually, let's not dig holes first. Actually, first thing I want to do is I'm going to pull out the shade cloth that we ordered, because I did take measurements when I knew that we were going to need this for this season. I took measurements last year almost, because it was about July of last year that we figured out that we needed to do something before the next season. But I'm going to go ahead and pull it out, kind of stretch it out and get some, remeasure it, and then kind of double check what my math from last year, make sure that it's right before I dig the holes, because once I dig the holes and set the posts in them, if the fabric's not going to stretch between them, then it's too late to adjust. Whereas if I double check it now before we dig the holes, we could adjust and play with where the holes go to make sure that we can achieve the desired end goal. What did we end up doing?
26 by 52.
26 by 52. Okay, that's on the tag there. So obviously the 52 is the long way, so we got 26 wide. Let's see if that works out. Well, we got to our fourth hole in the digging hole process, and the auger on the skid steer started spewing out hydraulic fluid. It looks like we got a loose hydraulic line, so we're going to try and get that tightened up, make sure everything's still functioning, and dig the rest of these holes. Hopefully it's not like a broken line, because that would take way more time to fix. It was leaking out of that one?
Yep.
Just spraying out? Well, it was loose before, it feels tight now.
It's weird that it just started.
It'd be like that sometimes. All the holes are dug. I've got Wes going with the skid steer to swap out the auger for the bucket so we can load the concrete into the bucket and use it to kind of distribute it around to the holes. And we'll also start grabbing the 6x6s and setting them out close to the holes. And then I've also got to get 2 of these 2x4s per post, and that's going to be for bracing 2 different directions for the concrete to set up, and we'll take those off tomorrow and go ahead and set up all of our cables and stuff. Now I'm using 14-foot and 12-foot 6x6s. My intention was to get 4 foot down in the hole. We got somewhere between 36 and 42 inches. One of the problems we were running into is that instead of using the big auger bit, I used the smaller one, so my hole is not as wide as usual, and that kind of prevented the post hole diggers from pulling out the material that far down. So I kind of settled in on about 36. So I'll probably end up cutting off some of the 6x6s to give me the height that I was going for. What I was hoping for was 8 foot on the outside and 10 foot on the inside ones to give us that kind of roof line canopy. But I'll probably just go ahead and cut the posts to make that line up how it's supposed to. Alright guys, we're putting the concrete in the holes, and turns out I don't need the 2x4 bracing because I used that smaller auger bit on the skid steer. The posts are actually very sturdy. because there wasn't a whole lot of space for the concrete. So I'm actually using less concrete than I thought, and I'm not going to need to brace it. See? Yeah, that's already really, really solid. We've got like 4 or 5 more left to set. Now, if I was going to be running boards or trying to like frame off of this, I would be checking square, and I would have definitely braced them just in case they shifted. But because I'm just running cables and a shade cloth, like, I'm not really checking square. I'm just making it look aesthetically right, and I'm not going to brace them because that's a massive amount of steps and work that we don't have to do for this job. So I did go get the materials, but not using them is going to save us a bunch of time. Hi guys, welcome back to day 2 of the build for the shade cloth. Posts are all set, solid. It's not too hot yet. Got a nice decent breeze, which you probably can hear that. So to get started on today, we got to get the cable secured before we can stretch the shade cloth over it. To do that and make sure that it functions properly, we kind of chose our highest point, which is on that back corner there, and we're going to take an 8-foot measurement. Then we're going to run a line around, and we're just going to level that line. All right, once we level that line, we'll make our cuts on our 8-foot posts, which are going to be the outside posts. And then on the inside posts that are going to be essentially 2 feet higher, we'll measure 2 feet up off of our mark and cut those at 10 feet. And then we'll drill holes, put our eyelets in, which I'll show you those. And then we're going to attach the cables, and we'll go over all the hardware and the cable attachments once we get to that phase. But for right now, we're going to be doing some measuring and leveling with our line level and our tape measures. Right, we've got all the posts cut where they needed to be. I have a flex volt battery operated DeWalt chainsaw that I use for stuff like this, so I'm not up there with the gas powered chainsaw. It definitely would add another level of risk. With the battery operated one, you just pull the trigger, hit the release, pull the trigger, and it goes. I used it actually I got it when we were working on the treehouse to cut a very similar situation when we had to cut the 8x8s that were for the treehouse. But anyways, worked great. So now we've been going around and drilling our holes at the top. So we've got the eyelets drilled and put in right there. They're not tightened down just yet. We did that 4 inches from the top of the post. That's just to make sure that it doesn't mess up or split the top by trying to put it too high up. You know, we're drilling a hole all the way through it. I just didn't want any kind of tension on it to, I don't know, break loose or cause the 6x6 to split in any way. And as far as the eyelets that we used, this is one of them right here. This is an 8-inch, 8-inch long, 1/4 inch thick eyelet. And if you're wondering how you figure out which one you need to use for your project, let me show you how I figure mine out. So I take the eyelet at Home Depot and I go up and I find the kind of lumber I'm using and I hold it up there and I say, yeah, it's long enough. Because I'm sure, you know, somebody can just remember, you know, because the 8 inches is from this end to the top of the eyelet. So it's not just talking about the part that goes through it. And I'm sure someone can remember, oh, well, you've got this much space from the bottom of the eyelet to where the bolt or the nut goes on. But I'm not that person. So when it comes to jobs like that, I always just take the hardware while I'm at the hardware store, hold it up against the kind of material I'm trying to pass through, if it's, you know, 2x6s or whatever, and make sure that I can actually get clearance. And that's how I pick my hardware. So we're running those to the inside of the post here, and then on, you know, the inside of the post here, which is, you know, the garden beds over here on my right. And then we're going to run the cables. We're going to run 3 different cables from each side. Essentially is getting its own independent cable. We're not running it like a square. So this will have a cable, the middle will have a cable, and the other end will have a cable. And on the 2 ends, we're going to feed it through, kind of snake it through the eyelets on the shade cloth, and then figure out how to kind of tighten it up. I think I've got an idea for that. I'll go into more detail with that once we actually get the shade cloth up. I think the first one we're going to install is probably going to be the middle, and then we'll take the shade cloth and throw it over the middle, and then pull it to each side. Probably have me work on one side, Wes work on the other, feed it through, and then attach it and make sure everything's going to work. Okay, we've got the middle cable stretched and tightened. I was going to go over the hardware that we use to attach and tighten this cable down. That's it. It's called a wire rope clip and thimble set. Essentially got these right here, which have little nuts on them, and you feed that through the cable. Actually, I'll just show you. So you got to buy the right size clip for the size cable. It'll be listed if this is, you know, 1/8 inch or 3/16, whatever size cable it is. You buy the corresponding clip. So it's going to go through this right here. Let's say we're going through the eyelet. We would loop through the eyelet and back around into that clip. Then you're going to tighten these little nuts down. And when that tightens down, it squeezes those 2 cables together, and that's what keeps it from moving. Now, the other thing that we're doing on one end is we're putting in a tension buckle, which is this. Let's see if I can loosen it up a little bit. So this is actually going to go, let's see, through here. Like this. We'll tighten this down, and the point of this is that you'll loosen this all the way up, so that way the threads are all the way out, and then you'll make this hand tight as you can get it by pulling it. And then whenever you get that done and you secure these and tighten this where it can't move anymore, you basically spin this and it will help take out the slack that you can't pull out by hand. So that's why that's how we got the wire up there tight enough to support the fabric. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, I'm sure there's somebody out there who's got a better video on it than I do. All right, from here we've kind of been discussing what our next steps are. How do we want to accomplish getting the fabric up there, getting it attached to the cable. I think the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and throw the fabric over the middle line because it's ready. And then what we're going to do is start feeding the cable we got through the eyelets of the fabric. As we're progressing through that, we'll have to feed it through the eyelet of the middle pole. And then once this end gets through all the eyelets of the fabric, through the middle eyelet on the pole, down at that end, we'll use our buckle system to secure it. And then we'll come back on this side and attach the buckle system. We'll attach the, what do they call it again? This thing. Wire, rope, and clip thimble set. And the tension buckle on this end, and then we'll tighten everything up. And that should, I think, function. The only other thing I'm foreseeing that we might have to do is on the corners of the shade fabric, we may have to find something that we can attach to the cable that'll help kind of stretch out the fabric to each corner, because I don't know that there's going to be anything that it's going to catch on, as far as it'll just be up there loose, and so we might have to figure out how to tighten it down. But other than that, I think it should be okay. Let's see what we've got. Hopefully our measurements are good and we don't have any issues with that. Okay, so as I predicted, the fabric is getting pushed back because of the wind. So we got some 550 cord, like this right here. See, this is all supposed to be down here. So we got it up, it's suspended, but now we've got to get 550 cord and tie off the corners. Once we get that tied off, we'll be able to identify if there's any other issues. So, but other than that, I think it's worked out pretty okay. Let's say there are a couple of things that we found were problems. Me and Wes just troubleshooting them a little bit. I think we've come up with a solution, but the bench problem is that when the wind is not blowing, the fabric is resting on top of these T-posts, which have sharp points. My concern is that if they get caught and the wind starts blowing, they're going to start ripping the shade cloth, and I don't want that. So we've been kind of looking at how do we get this up off of the cattle panels and the T-posts. Here's what we've come up with. So from that eyelet to the higher eyelet up there, we're going to run another piece of cable, right? Like here, kind of like framed in like a house. All right, we're going to make that really, really tight on both sides. And then I'm going to run another cable wrapped around and attached to that piece that's running up, and I'm going to run it down to the exact same component on the other side, right on top of the cattle panels, which will give this some lift. And once it gets lifted up, we'll be no longer concerned about it getting caught on the T-posts. Other than that, everything is perfect. We've got shade all the way around on all three beds. The tomatoes are already looking better, and I think this is going to be good. The shade cloth actually does catch more wind than I thought it would, considering it's got holes everywhere, but I think it's going to be okay. I think I'm just glad I went with a thicker cable than I initially was going to, because that will give it some more sturdiness if we do get some high winds. I don't think it's a real concern for just day-to-day stuff, it being damaged. Now, if a hurricane or the remnants of a hurricane came through, I don't know how it would do, so we'll just have to wait and see. To take it down is a considerable amount of work, so if we had enough notice because the storm was coming through, we could probably get it down for that. But if something just showed up out of nowhere, then it's just going to have to, is what it is, see if it survives. I think it'll be okay. So anyways, we'll come back tomorrow, wrap up this video, and get this shade cloth up off of these T-posts. Now, another thing I could have done, but I just didn't know how the length and width of the shade cloth was going to work, how much give it was going to have. Now, had I known it was going to be like this, and I could have figured that out before cutting the posts off or even setting the post the way that I did, we could have made the outside posts higher, or the inside post higher and the outside post higher. We could have gone up 1 more foot. And had we done that, then it would have been up off the cattle panels and the T-posts. My concern with going that much higher is that I feel like we might have let more sun in than we were intending. And so I think that the solution me and Wes came up with is probably going to be ideal. So anyways, we'll come back tomorrow. This shouldn't take very long tomorrow to wrap up. Good morning, guys. Hey, we're back out at the shade cloth over these tomato rows. Gonna get it wrapped up. I did come back out yesterday after dinner and thought it through a little bit further and came up with a little bit different solution than I initially had decided on. And I ended up using some fencing materials. So right here above my head, that little white tensioner, that is actually for making H-braces and fencing. I have some of them left over, plus I've got plenty of tension wire. It's high tensile. It can take like, I don't know, I think the kind that I have is like a 10 gauge or an 11 gauge, and it can take like, I don't know, 1,450 pounds of pull before it breaks. Anyways, I ran that fencing tension line through all the eyelets on the posts on each end, and then I ran a support line over the top of this tomato row right in front of me. So if you look at this one, you can see that there's the line. It's pulled the shade cloth off the top of the tomato beds, and this was what it looked like yesterday, because I haven't finished this one, which you can tell that the shade cloth is sagging pretty heavily and resting and touching the tomato support. So to finish up this morning, I've got to run that second support, and then one more thing that I decided to do is on these outside edges that are going vertically towards the tall post. I've got some like metal zip ties that'll be a little more sturdy than like a plastic zip tie. Just because of the amount of wind that this thing is catching. It's actually catching more wind than I thought it would, having as many holes as it does. But anyways, I decided to go ahead and use some metal zip ties and tie those eyelets on the shade cloth off to the tension wire that I put in last night. So I've got a few sections to tie off with zip ties. I've got one support run to run over that row of tomatoes, and that's going to wrap it up. All right, guys, she's all finished up. I think it turned out great. Like I said, we had to do a couple of pivots, a couple of adjustments, but that's just how it goes sometimes when you're building something for the first time that you've never done. All in all, I feel like it turned out fantastic. I think it's going to be super effective for keeping these tomatoes protected from the South Carolina heat. And honestly, I actually have a couple other pieces of shade cloth that I'm going to do something similar to. One of them, I'm thinking about putting just a small square out in the paddock that we keep our jerseys in, just to give them something more consistent that has shade. So I think it'll be way easier than this, because it's not going to have tomatoes and stuff underneath it. But anyways, I think this turned out great, guys. Like I said, I hope this was something that you guys feel like you can apply at your farms if you're dealing with a lot of heat, humidity, and want to kind of extend your tomato season. If not, I hope it was just entertaining. Thank you guys, and I will catch you guys on the next one.